got it. So I put on recording, and then we will start discuss. So before we go, so today we will start discussing a review of array. And I believe you all have already learned array in your previous course. Before we start, let's quickly go over some leftover from last class. Okay, I'm going to share screen. The very first one is about coding standards. So all of the labs and the projects, but not reports or homeworks. Okay, so just a lab and the projects. When you submit, please follow this coding standard. So I'm not going to go over in very detail. And after class, this coding standard is also available on our course website. So I recommend you for the first couple of lab and the project, each time when you do your lab, before you submit, you take a look at this coding standard to see if you fully follow this coding standard, okay? And so then you kind of, so after a couple of labs, you kind of know the practice, and then you can just follow this practice, okay? Because in this field, the programming field, it's good. You start from beginning to follow good programming practice, okay? Okay, so coding standards or objective, and some best suggested practice. So modular approach, we should know. So not just write a single main, is that we need to do a modular design. That means you divide a big task into some smaller modular task unit. Is it? In this case, through this whole semester, we will learn like write a lot of methods in Java. In other programming, like you call it functions. So that's called modular design. Don't write everything in main, okay? So do design some methods for your program. Methods can be repeated, so that's reusable. So that's one of the advantage. We do modular design. And the second, do need to get used to use parameters over here, like here. Okay, don't just use everything with global reachable. Okay, try to learn how to pass parameters back and forth from your method and the main. Okay, between the method and the main, and try to use constant specifically to the application if it's needed. Okay, make a code straightforward. And the precondition, we will next discuss about that. So that's a general practice suggestion. And the documentation, okay, so each of your lab and your file, you need to have documentation. So here's a general recommendation. For each file, be careful here, each file you need to have file documentation comment. So you need to provide who is the author of the file, date you start to work on the program file, and what's the file's purpose. Is it? Okay, so that's the file commentation. And then for each method, you also need to do documentation. Function, each method's purpose. What does it do? Is it precondition, post-condition? Okay, later on we will discuss that. And then also inside your code, not every line, okay, but you select some lines, you need to do some inline comments in order to clarify the section of code. So you may write a section, do something inside a function, so you may put a comment if that section of code is not that straightforward. Because in the future, when you work in a company, you work in a team, okay, and your code is not just a one-time work, okay. Later on, some other engineer needed to maintain your code. That's why we always say software version 1, version 2, version 3 of the versions, etc. So other team members, they also need to be able to read your code. That's why we need to also do some comments. Okay, identifier names. So identifier names here regarding your file name. Don't just name of the file as F1, F2, file 1, file 2. That doesn't make sense, is it? So each of your lab and the project, you can name as, like in our case, you can name as lab 1, or you give the file a name specific about the task. Is it suppose it's do some application regarding SIMO, then you may name that as the SIMO app, something like that. Is it? That's for the file name, okay? And then for each method, you also need to give a name, meaningful name. And generally speaking, for so over here, so generally speaking, so over here regarding name, okay, so file name, okay, and the second is method name. Method name, generally speaking, is a verb, starting with a verb, okay, and you can use either underscore or camel case, and following by task name, or over here like a task name. This is called camel case. This is underscore. So you can choose either way, okay? So that's the method name. So give some meaningful, and always start with a verb, because method is to do something, is it? So always start with a verb. Like you can call your method calculate GPA, and then following with the parameter. So that's called method name. And you also have variable name. The variable name should be noun. It's not a verb. It doesn't do it. It's identify some name. So it's a verb. So like in this case, then you need to have like a string, maybe student ID. So this name, it's very clear. Oh, that means it's represent a student ID. So give some meaningful name, okay? And also like here, use upper or lower case, or use underscore if you have multiple words. Okay, so that's about identification name, and also need to do indentation. Okay, don't just get everything lined left adjusted. Okay, so using using indentation and also block. Okay, so that's indentation and braces. Also try to use braces is it to block the code, okay? And also don't clump everything together, is it? This is just like you write an English article, is it? You have paragraph, between paragraph, we have blank line, is it? So similar, the similar concept in coding, okay? So use blank line, so you group your code in block. Generally speaking, you have like a declaration block. Is a declaration block as you declare all variables, is it in a method? Is it? So you can group them together, okay? So, and then group them together, and then you can use blank line to separate different group, okay? And also align identifiers in declaration, like I just said, okay? And also use white space for readability, either blank line, is it, or some space, is it? Just like you, common sense is like you write English article. And if you have output, make your output also readable, is it? Have some label, arrange it in readable formatting, okay? So this is, or regarding coding standard. And what next here is, if you recall previously, we discussed commenting for method. Is that true? So we needed to comment on file. Is it? And also comment for method, documentation for method. So this, generally speaking, includes three parts: precondition, post condition, and purpose. Three parts. Okay. And precondition, like in this case, is it? So this is to calculate the square root. Square root of a number. So this is what's the purpose of this method, is it? And in Java, generally, you should, this is a class method, is it? A public, a static, a void, is it? And then whenever for method, it's always, so regarding a method, you should have already learned this in your previous class, is it? So return type, you identify, is it? Followed by method name. And for method name, you can choose, is it either use underscore to combine multiple words. Okay, or choose camel space. Okay, camel case. Is it? Camel case means you have, like in this case, then it's going to be right square root. Is it? So that's the second part for a method. Is it? And the following is parameter list. Is that all of the parameters? Is for parameter, it should identify by type. And then this is name of parameter. So just a quick review, okay? And so in this case, because you're going to calculate the square root of x, is it? Definitely it should be greater or equal than 0, is it? To make this method working, is it? So you can write this as precondition, is it? And what's the post? Okay, the post condition in this case is you're going to calculate the square root of x and output it to somewhere. In this case, it's output on screen, is it? And for screen, we call it standard output. You can also output to file, is it? Over internet, you can output it to your website, is it? So there are multiple ways for you to output. But here, okay, it said, okay, the post condition, after you run this method, where the result will go, is it? So in this case, it's going to be, okay, output the calculated result of x, is it? And the purpose is, in this case, is to calculate the square root of a number. So this is regarding you document a method, okay? So in all of our lab and project, so please try to follow this coding standard, okay? Okay, so that's some leftover from yesterday's class. And the detailed, both of the PDF files, you can also get it on our course website, okay? And what next we will do is we will start a review array, okay? So let's take a look in example. And this example is also available on our course website. And the name for this file is called chapter 1 array. Okay, so that's why I got it as a package. Okay, and so a couple of things we are going to review. The very first thing is in Java, how do you use constant? Constant, okay. So constant, so in this case, if you take a look, this max, is it we capitalize, and generally speaking, you cap all letters, okay. So this represents some maximum number going to be used in this application, is it? And it's a variable, basically. It's still a variable, is it? But in this case, we call it a constant. And its number, it's an integer number of what? 999. And what's the difference between this method and this kind of method, public int max? Okay, or you can also do public static max int max. Is it? So it's different, all these three types, is it? So this just as a variable name and the type, is it? And this public, and later on we will learn, okay? And probably you already learned that's accessibility. Or we call it visibility. Is it? Generally speaking, you declare a variable. That's how you declare a variable. Is it? And if you just do something like this, this means it's an instance variable. Is it? And then for this case, this max, and it has one more keyword called static. Is it? So this means this is a class variable. And later on, we will discuss in detail about the difference between instance variable and class variable, okay? But anyway, you can see for both of this, that we don't have this keyword final. For this max, it has static, final, and the type, is it? And a keyword over here is a final and the static. Is it both here? So what is it? This is a constant. Okay, a constant means not changed. Not changed. Okay, and also, okay, and also you can use this max to represent 999. Okay, and later on, then you can do something like, suppose over here, int x equals to max. Is it? And this is a constant. So basically that means 999. So x will get the number 999, okay, because max is a constant. It's not changeable, okay? Like this, if you define like over here as -100, is it? Then this max, you can change it to positive. But for this max, you cannot change because it's called a constant, okay? So that's the quick review for constant. Okay, then next, let's see the major thing. What over here today we discuss is Java array. Array, is it? And if you take a look for main, you already see this a lot, is it? A main method is the entry point of an application. Entry point of an app. Okay, you do need main, okay, method for all or any of your Java application. Otherwise, operating system cannot run your app. And then in this case, so this is, anyway, this is also a method. Is it? A method has parameters, is it? And the parameter in this case, the parameter name is args. So this is parameter name. The type is what? Is string. And what else? Here, you have this square brackets, is it? So this tells the program that this parameter is an array. Okay, so what is an array? Array means array used to what? Used to store a number of same type items. Is it? So a number, so not just one. Is it a single one? Then it is like in this case, int x. So x is a variable. So it can only store one integer. Is it one integer? An integer, suppose like x then equal 100. Is it just one integer? And then over here, next, let's see. Okay, so in our program, then we will see here, this an array. So it's a variable. But this variable, the type is integer. But did you see it also has this empty square brackets? So this tells the program it is an array. Okay, of the type is what? Integer. So then it can store more than one item. But of course, it can also store just a single item. Okay, that's fine. And so if you do this, int square brackets and the array name. So type, so variable type, following by square brackets, and then array name. This means you just declare an array. Okay, just declare an array. And then next, whenever in Java you want to use array, you need to allocate memory. And you also need to specify how much memory you want to allocate. Okay, how much memory is it? So here it says, oh, I want 10 integers. I want this array to store 10 integers. So you can do int is a type and the number 10, is it? And this is a keyword new. Okay, new. That tells the program that is going to allocate memory for 10 integers. Then what does this mean? Later I will explain more, okay? So in machine, so you have memory. So you can view like a memory, like suppose the room, is it our classroom or whatever, some space, some room, is it? So 10 means, okay, you need kind of 10 rooms, is it? 10 rooms. And because it's involved room, so it need to have size, is it? And in programming language, it's identified by bits or bytes. Okay, and for integer, for this type, it's 4 bytes. 4 bytes. And each byte, 1 byte is 8 bits. And what is a bit? Bit is either 0 or 1. Okay. So over here, that means it needs 10 of 4 bytes, is it? So 10 by 4 bytes. So total it needs 40 bytes of space, kind of like the square root, the square feet, is it, for a house, is it? Okay, each square feet, each room is 4 square feet and you need 10 room, so it's 40 square feet. It's kind of like that concept. But anyway, here says, okay, this array will take 40 square, not 40, 40 bytes, okay, 40 bytes, and it's consecutive memory, okay, because later on in this class, we will learn some other data structure, then you will see the difference and the Y array, okay. Okay, so you already learned array in the other class. So just a quick review here. So here we declare array and we also allocate memory for this array. Then you can start to use, okay. So here the key point, okay. You must declare and allocate memory first, okay, before you start to use an array. Okay, so here is a point. So you must have declaration and memory allocation for an array. Then we can start to use. Suppose we do this loop. We're going to assign element by element of the array for some value, is it? Okay, so what over here we are going to do, suppose I comment this part out. Is it, if I comment this out, this is easy to understand. Is it, it's a loop, is it? And to access individual element in an array, what you do is over here, this is array name. Is it array name? And then square brackets, then some number, is it? So array, this we call it index, array index. Index start at 0, is it? So this is the first element, is it? And the second array 1, is it? The third array 2, is it? Okay, so next, how about let's do this. So next will be today's first quiz question. So you can send it to chat, okay, first quiz question. And send it private to me, okay, not public to everyone, just private to me, okay. You assign 100 to the last element of an array for this an array. Can you do that and then send it to chat privately, okay, to me? How do we do that? So for this array, it has 10 elements, that we all know this, 10 elements. And we just said the first one is identified by the name. This we call it sub-0, is it? So index is 0. So this is the first element, is it? So if we draw it, so this is going to point here, is it? So this is sub-0, then sub-1, then sub-2, is it? So what's the last one? It's index. Anyone still remember? What's the last one?
101.
Pardon me?
101.
No, the last element's index. What's this?
Should be 9, correct?
Yeah, very good. Should be 9. Okay. So how to do that? How do you assign 100 to the last element of the array? Anyone knows the answer? How do we do that? The last one. How do I write the last element of this array?
An array.
An array.
Then using brackets, you put the index at 9.
Yes. Okay.
Is
Yeah, very good. Okay, this means the last. How do I assign 100 to it?
equals 100 and then a semicolon.
Yes. Okay, then equals 100 semicolon. Is it? Okay, so that's today's first quiz question. Okay, so everybody, you need to send it to the chat. Okay, if you understand this, then over here, I use a loop. And this is very common when you deal with array, is it? So here I use a for loop. Is it start at 0? Is it all the way to 9 and increment by 1? Is it? And I means each individual element. Is it? Like over here, start at sub 0, sub 1, sub 2, all the way to sub 9 here. Is it sub 9? Is it? And equals what? Equals I plus 1 times 100. Is it? So it's 0, then 100, 200, something like that. Is it? And then for this next statement, what it does is output. Is it? Output what? If you take a close look, it output two variables. Is it? The first is I. I is a loop index. The second one is what? Is array element. Array element. Is it? And for this print, this is printf. This is a formatted output. You can do formatted output. And over here, so I is integer, is it? So that's why over here the percentage D matches the I, is it? And then the next array is also integer, is it? So it matches this. So this is formatted, is it? So percentage, and then D means you are going to use a variable, is it? Outside of the double quotation. And you are going to fill this one with whatever the value the corresponding variable holds. That's the purpose, okay. Okay, so over here, we learn how to access each individual element. Okay, so you declare, you initialize an array over here. And like I just explained, so this means how to access each element in an array, okay? We use this a lot, okay? So we need to get used to this. Okay, so that's regarding, I'm going to comment this part out. So we kind of understand this, is it? So next, let's take a look. If you take a close look, you will find here, you call some method, is it? And then you plug in this array, is it? And basically, after you allocate memory for this array, the array has, so an array hasn't been initialized. Is it? That means not having value. Is it? It doesn't have specific values, but when you deal with an array, you want to, the array has values for each of its corresponding element, is it? So how do we do that? We can use a method to do that. So over here. So let's take a look at this method. So this is a method we define called initialize array, is it? So starting with a verb, then following a name. Return type, this means it's a class method, is it? And the visibility is public, okay? And here is a parameter. So this method parameter is an array, okay, in this case, and it's an integer array. Integer array. Okay, so what this method does, it's pretty simple. It's just a simple for loop, is it? And assign corresponding value to each of the array element, is it? And then after you call this method, then whatever plugged into this method, the array, then it will have value. Okay, it will have the value. So over here, basically this parameter array will get updated, is it? After you call this method, is it? And this basically in programming language, we call this parameter pass by reference. Okay, pass by reference. And array in Java is a reference type. Okay, it's a reference type, and later on we will explain the difference. Okay, it's a reference. So whatever you change inside this array, it will get the value. Okay, and then let's go back to see how we call this. Over here, is it? We call that method, and we plug in an array. And this an array in this case, it's called parameter, or not parameter, it's called argument. Okay, when you define the method, over there you call method parameter. When you call the method, whatever you plug in, you call it an argument. Okay, so this is argument. So basically, this an array exists in main method. Is it? You plug it in. Is it? And then the an array, this an array will get the values through execution of that method, is it? Via execution of the method. That's how it works, is it? Okay, so, and then it should get what if we analyze? It should get max is 999, is it? Yeah, 909, that's a constant, is it? So over here you plug in the constant, and then you plug in the constant. And then you use the 1 times 999, 2 times 999, 3 times 900, something like this, is it? And we should get the result, is it? It can output, is it? And after class, you can try to run this program. You will see it did get off the results, is it? Okay, so that's regarding this method. But here, let's see. Okay, if I do something like this, let's see, use this color. If so this is parameter. And then over here, I do this. I do parameter equals new. And then I do this. I do assignment. Then in main, if I call this method, so my question is, so in main, you plug in main, we call, as in we call like this, initialize array. Then we plug in that an array. Is it? And then we do that system dot out dot print. Is it? And we have that an array sub I. Is it? So the question, this is going to be our second quiz question. The question is, what the output will be? Will it be like over here, 999 and 999 times 2, 999 times 3, and till, and my question, 999 till what? Till 10, is it? Start with 1, is it? So will this output be correct? Will this output be correct output? Anyone know the answer?
No, because
yes.
it's supposed to be 0, not 1.
Yes, very good. It's no. This is wrong. Is it? Why? Because this goes to where? This goes to a different location. A different memory location of the array. It's not the original array's memory location. It's kind of, you have the you have a building. This initial point to another building, not your original building. So whatever you put the all of the stuffs in this new building, it's not going to be in that old building, is it? So if you do something like this, that's because you overwrite. Is it? You overwrite. Okay, it's all go to this new location. That old location won't get anything. Okay, so be very careful. Okay, if you do want to update, and then don't do this. Okay, so don't reassign parameter to a new memory location. Okay, so that's the second question. Please send your answer to the chat, okay, privately to me. Otherwise, otherwise you will not get a quiz point. So make sure you send your answer to the quiz, to our chat, okay. So this is this initialize array. We needed to be careful. And then next, let's take a look at the next one. The next one, we have the secondary B array. Okay, and in this case, you may say, oh, this is different from the previous array, is it? Over here, it's you declare an array. And at the same time, you also allocate memory for the array. Is it? So you combine both tasks together in a single statement, and then you call the reverse method. Is it? And this over here, similar, you just output whatever, okay? And then let's see the reverse method. Okay, for this reverse method, take a close look, the return type. Return type, this time it's not a void. Void means it doesn't return anything, is it? So this time the return type is an integer array. Okay, an integer array. So you have int and blank square brackets. And the parameter is an integer array. It's also an array, is it? So what it does is, if you take a closer look in this case, okay, so this is inside this method. This is called a local variable, is it? It's an array, the result. Okay, this result will be allocated whatever the size of the parameter array's size is it? And then you are going to assign whatever the value to this result array. And then you return it, is it? So you can also do something like this, okay? So a method can also return an array, okay? And then let's go back here in our main. So then in main, did you see you call reverse? Then you assign it to be array. Why you can do it? Because it returns an array. Okay, returns an array. Okay, so we haven't finished today's material, okay, and that's it's close to